Jeff was pioneering also, or played a crucial role in the establishment of the European regime, the ECSPR, that is actually will be compulsory to be applied by all platform providers like Tökeportal from tomorrow on. Jeff, we are not having yet the license, but we will have it soon within weeks, so there will be some technical overlap, or we will handle the situation, but we are on the way. So it was also a huge challenge for us. So that's for the beginning, and I'll have to, and I would like to give the floor to Jeff Lynn. So please, Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, everybody, very much. Thank you for having me. I'm very, very sorry not to be with you in person today. Budapest is one of my very favorite cities. I gather the venue you're in is new and beautiful one. I would love to see, but I couldn't quite make it work. I will say it's a slightly sort of digression, but as Nora well knows, Budapest plays a sort of interesting role in the history of Seedrs. Back in 2012, after about 3 years of working with the UK regulator, with an FSA, to become the first authorized regulated equity crowdfunding platform. We got confirmation from the FSA that through really authorized and all set, went out and raised funding around the back of that, and then it's lowering our right to the weekend decided to take along great to Budapest. We were at the airport in the UK on our way to fly over, sort of 4:59 p.m. on Thursday, Friday. We got a note, saying, actually, the hierarchy of this is around security conference that got brought up. And I immediately tried writing back and getting in touch with them, actually, which is so my wife and I sort of arrived at this in a little bit of a stupor. It looked like a few years of work had just gone completely down the drain. And instead of
recording in progress.
Instead of our kind of relaxing, unwinding weekend, we kind of, had a slightly surreal visit. But we did, I think, what any sensible person would do in those circumstances. We ate goulash, we drank Tokai, we went to the baths, we went to the opera. We distracted ourselves as best as we can. We had a very enjoyable time. We remained very grateful to Budapest for providing us that distraction that weekend. Ultimately got back to the UK, got the lawyers involved, got some politicians involved, pulled a few things, and we wound up authorized, and the rest, as they say, is history. But anyway, that's my quick sort of wax lyrical about Budapest, and I've been back many times since. I look forward to coming again. Sorry not to be there today. What I am here to do today, or what I'm doing virtually, is just I'll tell you a little bit about what we do at Seedrs, just as a little bit of context, and then talk a little bit about what we've seen in the kind of evolution of the UK ecosystem over the past kind of decade to 15 years. I very consciously don't have slides. I've found as the years have gone by that when I do these kinds of talks, the slides just get in the way more than help. But if anybody, if there's any information anybody wants or any data or anything that I'm not providing or that you miss, please, you can reach out to me through Nora. I'd be very happy to send you anything you want. But for now, you're sort of stuck looking at my face as I talk for a few minutes. So I'll tell you a little bit about Seedrs. We started, my co-founder and I started working on Seedrs in 2009 with a really very simple idea that still holds, I think, to this day, and applies to many other crowdfunding platforms out there, which is we want it to be a marketplace to combine, to bring together great entrepreneurs who were looking for capital. And initially, we thought it would just be at the very early stages. As it turns out, we found applications for our marketplace at much later stages as well. But we wanted to be able to provide, give a marketplace where those entrepreneurs could raise the capital that they needed, but also where investors of all types, retail, high net worth, mass affluent, ultra rich, you name it, as well as eventually institutional and quasi-institutional investors could allocate capital in an efficient way to those businesses. And that is at its heart what crowdfunding is. As the technology of the internet and people's comfort with financial transactions online grew, we saw a window to try to do it. And so that is what we did after our authorization saga. We launched in 2012. had, a really sort of interesting decade in the sense that, we went through lots of ups and downs. We raised a great round for ourselves from one of the UK's leading investors, only a few years later for that investor to implode and have, a number of sort of, reverberations on us. We tried to merge with another UK platform and got blocked by the competition authorities. But all the while, we continued to drive growth in the business and expand what we were doing. And we're now at a point where we funded over 2,000 deals, a few £1 billion deployed through the platform. And I believe, somebody at least recently ranked us as the most active investor in private companies in the UK of the past decade. So we, there's a lot more for us to do, very much, and the huge mark still for us to leave. But we're very proud of what we've achieved so far. Last year, 2022, we were acquired by a business called Republic, which is a US firm building a truly global investment platform for private investments. And their focus is not just on equity, but on all asset classes: debt, crypto, real estate, games, et cetera. And we are now their European arm. That has been a very exciting part of the journey for us. And there's much more to come from that relationship. And then just a few weeks ago, we received our authorization in Ireland under the new European crowdfunding regulation, which Nora, of course, mentioned. And yes, that was, that itself was a long process, both of the lobbying and work with the European Commission on creating that legislation, and then ultimately, once it was in place, turning around, building our establishment in Dublin, and now being authorized. And so we're very pleased to be on our way to expansion really across the EU. We've always done a limited amount of European business under reverse solicitation approaches, but we now have the chance to actually do a full-blown model all across Europe, which is really very exciting. And so that's a little bit about us. And as I say, I mean, if anybody wants to learn more about Seedrs itself, or what we do, or what I do, please do get in touch. You can find me easily online, or Nora has my details. But I thought what I would sort of, focus on for the remainder of the chat is just a little bit about kind of what we've seen in the UK ecosystem, over this past kind of 10 to 15 years, because it has been a really interesting, I think, at least, and encouraging development, and one with, I think, interesting lessons as other geographies build their own ecosystems. So, I think, today the UK is, within the sort of general kind of European context, seen as a relatively robust startup and scale-up ecosystem. I think that, we probably are the largest in Europe, in terms of, whether measured by capital deployed or number of businesses funded or unicorns. And I think that's all great, but that was very much not, a starting position for us. And, when my co-founder and I started working on Seedrs back in 2009, it was really just the very, very, looking back, the very beginnings of what the ecosystem would become. And even then, I'm American initially. I've built my career and life in the UK, and my focus has been on doing business in the UK. But my American friends and former colleagues and all would say, "Oh, building a tech startup, you got to go to America for that. And you can't build anything serious in the UK." And there was some legitimacy to what they were saying. I mean, the term unicorn hadn't quite been invented yet, but we did talk about kind of tech startups that went on to build kind of $1 billion valuations. And the only one anybody could point to really anywhere in Europe in of that sort of, of the internet vintage of these businesses was Skype. And Skype was a great company, and about 4 different countries laid claim to having, been home to Skype. The UK was one of them, and that was great. But, a single swallow does not a summer make, or whatever the expression is. I'm sure I'm mangling it in English, and it probably translates even worse for all of you. But point being, we needed more, to see an ecosystem really grow. And I think that the fact that, it did grow in the way that it did, starting about the time that we started working on Seedrs, was driven by a couple of factors. One big one was the global financial crisis of 2007 to 2009. Financial disruption is really an amazing sort of mother to innovation, and to the growth great individual businesses and the great growth of great ecosystems. And I think there are a few reasons for that, and kind of my observation and experience. One is opportunity costs go down. You know, when everybody's got a fat salary working at Goldman Sachs, it's very difficult to take that leap into building a great business. When suddenly, you know, the big money, you know, in traditional corporate and banking and other types of jobs is a little bit, you know, thinner on the ground, you know, it becomes the opportunity cost of giving something a try very much reduces. And so I think we saw a whole generation of entrepreneurs who left the corporate world, left the sort of traditional financial world to start up interesting businesses. And I think that was, you know, a really kind of key moment, back then. I think overlapping with that was a really good sort of political environment in the UK. Starting before, I mean, the starting under the last Labour government in late 2008, 2009, but really sort of turbocharged under the Conservative and Liberal government in 2010. And there were a couple of things that factored in there. One was a strong regulatory environment, a real push to be open from a regulatory perspective, to embrace competition as a good thing, to embrace innovation as a good thing. But another factor was simply the sort of bully pulpit that politicians have, the ability of politicians to go out domestically and around the world and say, we're building a great ecosystem here, come look. And, you know, and there were times back then when I think, you know, some founders resented the government stealing their thunder, effectively saying, hey, we're already doing this. The government can't get credit for this. Our view, however, was, my own view at least, was the more they amplify it, the more they tell world leaders and business leaders around the world how great things are here, the more that becomes a reality. And so with those kind of factors, with some intrepid providers of capital coming in to assist and take a chance on the ecosystem, even when there weren't many proof points. And I put Seedrs, you know, sort of somewhere in that category, but there were many other great ones as well, both marketplaces and individual funds and individual investors, you know, started taking some chances. And that then, you know, began to build some proof points. And by 2014, 2015, we were starting to see a meaningful number of the now coined unicorn, you know, type businesses growing in the ecosystem. And at that point, that's the point at which momentum really develops and these things become a bit self-fulfilling. And we've had a great run since then. But I would just say a word of quick caution on that, which is to say that I don't think, you know, that our situation here in the UK is an entirely rosy one. And I think there are a couple of factors ahead we need to think about. One is, I think we overheated a bit before the sort of market turned in 2022. I think there are a lot of businesses that are now in a position of defending valuations that are going to be very difficult to defend in the long term as the market downturn has hit. I think that, you know, we will get through and we will do well, but, you know, one can never be complacent. I also think Brexit worked against us. I mean, I was very vocal as a Remainer. I don't have an apocalyptic view of the UK's leaving the EU. I don't think it's you know, I don't think the country's going to sink into the North Sea, but I do think that we will have fewer opportunities and much of Europe will have more opportunity than we otherwise would. So I would just wrap up, I suppose, by saying, you know, here in the UK, we have, you know, a wonderful ecosystem. Please do come to Silicon Roundabout and visit some of our businesses and funds. I'm always happy to make introductions. We've got some great things going here, but we also don't have in any way, shape, or form an impregnable position. I think the years ahead, you know, we'll have some tough times, but more importantly, and I'm more enthusiastically, for Seedrs as we expand into Europe and for all of you, I think the potential for more great European ecosystems. There are many already that are building well, including in Central and Eastern Europe, and I'm very excited to see more and more grow as well. So I will leave it there. I'll say thank you very much, Nora. I don't know if you want to do questions or what, but I'm happy to stay on.
What do you think makes
you don't Nora, you're muted on my screen. Sorry. Everybody else I think can hear you. But...
Okay, I thought the microphone is connected then through the cable. Okay, so what makes a crowdfunding platform successful? What are the key factors behind the successful crowdfunding platform? What would be your advice to pay special attention to? And then the other question, and that the last question, is that what Seedrs benefited from the acquisition by Republic?
Both really good questions. What makes a good crowdfunding platform? I mean, it's one of the, I'd say if I had a great answer to that, we'd probably be doing better than we are. But I think a couple of things. I mean, the right deal flow is, I think, the backbone of the platform. And I've gone back and forth on this through the years because it is a two-sided marketplace, and having investors on the platform, having liquidity is very important. When we started in 2012, I was very conscious of not being just another place, and which was common then, where you had lots of startups listed, but nobody actually investing, no company. That doesn't, that'll fall apart pretty quickly. And I focused heavily on building out the investor base. And I think that is important. But ultimately, investors we have found don't really care about Seedrs or about Token Portal or about a given other specific platform. They care about the deals that we host. We're a storefront fundamentally. And if the deals are compelling and interesting and ones they want to invest in, and we've done our job right in terms of how we structure and present them, and all the kind of technical and legal aspects of it, then it's not that we build it and they will come. There still is a lot of work to be done on investor acquisition, but it's made much, much easier if you have the goods to show, so to speak. So the right sort of deal flow, the right sort of founders, and that doesn't mean just the future unicorns. That doesn't mean any one thing. And if anything, I think having a strong variety of deals is really important. And I could go on this, but I'll just finish with the one story I always like to tell, which is that I knew we were doing something right maybe 6 months, 9 months in, when we had a range of different deals on the platform, different types, and I had 2 meetings one day. I went to one meeting with an investor who said, I looked at the platform and it's great. You've got some really interesting tech companies on there. I do like what I see, but you've also got this musical theater production. What's that doing there? That's terrible. It just weighs the whole thing down. You got to get rid of that kind of thing. Went to my next meeting and the guy said, look, I'm so sick. There's so many overvalued tech companies, but you've got this cool musical theater production on here, and that's really neat. And, that would really be interesting to me. And, my view was, yes, okay, so we've sort of pissed off everybody a little bit. That's probably exactly what we should do. There should be deals on there that everyone does like, and deals on there that that different people don't like. So look, I think that's probably, the core to me, getting the right balance deal flow. In terms of Republic, look, I mean, there are a number of things that acquisition, has done. I mean, being one aspect of it's very simply is being part of a large, well-funded group means that, we are no longer in the sort of 18-month to 2-year constant fundraising cycle. The crowdfunding business, it is a hard business. One of the features of it is that it is a relatively high fixed cost base or sort of, inbuilt cost base, relative to revenues in early years, which means that if you want to build something of any kind of real scale, you have to fundraise, you have to rely on capital. We raised in total about 30 million pounds of our own money before being acquired, and we would have continued to be, sort of on that cycle. So being part of a large, well-funded group, they're raising money too, and it's all sort of part of the same thing, but being part of that is important. But it's more than that. The global reach, commercially, is really more. We talked to, as focused as we are on Europe and the pan-European opportunity, the fact that we're now able to offer a lot of deals the opportunity to do co-raises, so they can raise both in the UK and Europe through us and in the US through Republic, is very exciting. And then the third thing is, as I say, Republic has been very ambitious in terms of asset classes. And I've been a big believer that when you start out as a crowdfunding platform, at least in our experience, and I think this is, a generally decent advice in Europe, is, I think there is value in focusing on a single vertical, a single asset class. It helps establish what you're doing, establish the brand, establish the presence. But over time, I am more and more convinced by the all-in-one marketplace idea. And there are reasons, particularly, equity's been very compelling for a long time because the yield has been so low, in debt markets. But I think debt, potentially offers some really interesting opportunities right now, if done right. I'm not the biggest crypto enthusiast in the world, but there are some amazing crypto projects out there. And if you can be part of helping to build and finance those, as Republic is, and as we will be here in Europe soon, that's very exciting. So being part of that multi-asset class dynamic is I'd say the third thing that has really helped us.
Well, as usually, I would have, of course, a lot more questions, but we have to then finish now and respect your schedule too. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you've had a small accident or a small health problem not to be able to join us, therefore just that's an excuse, but I really would like to have you here next time in person. Hopefully you will be able to make it. Yes.
I look forward to it. Thank you all. Everybody have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference. And thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'll follow up soon. Thank you, Jeff. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.